Hey guys, Brittany here from By Brittany Goldwyn. I post videos about plants and projects, and today we are doing a little very early spring planting because I got a package from Gurney's today. Not sponsored, I bought all of this stuff. I got a pack of rhubarb, 3 little starts that we're gonna plant in the backyard. I got 25 ever-sweet strawberry starts. And then I got 2 types of seeds that I'm going to start today. One for a seedless watermelon variety I've never tried before, which you can start seedless watermelon from seed. And one for a vertical growing squash. Now I typically do not grow squash because it's kind of annoying to grow and it takes up a lot of space and it's very vulnerable to different pests, but I'm going to see if growing a vertical variety that I can stake is a little bit easier for me in my smaller space. So let's get started. So the strawberries should probably be the most time consuming, so I'm going to do that first. And I am out in our big in-ground garden bed area that we put in last spring, that we have 2 rows for asparagus. And that was kind of like the whole reason we put in this bed. Now, strawberries are pretty low growing and they make a really, really good natural living mulch between asparagus plants, since you do have to plant asparagus plants so far apart. They have really big underground root systems, meaning that it leaves a lot of space between them for something like strawberries to grow. So when you order bare root strawberries, they're going to come probably looking something like this, just a jumbled up mess that does not look anything like strawberry plants. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just gently start breaking these apart to see how many are in here. Now, I got 25, so I'm gonna make sure that there is 25 in here, and then we're gonna start preparing the area for planting. So some of these you can see have a little bit of foliage on them, but some of them do not have any. So don't be concerned if you get bare root plants that don't have any foliage on them. That is totally fine. They will rebound. They're really not supposed to be growing that much right now. So here's one. Okay, I just finished separating them and laying them out, and I have 28, which is awesome because I bought 25. So the first thing that I am going to do is hobble over here because I am wearing a boot right now, a boot and a crock, which is the preferred way to do garden work. And I'm going to start removing some of these leaves that we have here. So I had dressed these whole beds with leaves because this was the first year that we had the asparagus going through the winter. So I wanted to make sure they were super insulated, and of course, leaves are awesome at doing that and they're great for the soil. So I'm not gonna take all of them off. I already started taking some of those off, mostly so I could just dig down a little bit to figure out exactly where my asparagus crowns are, because I want to plant 1 strawberry plant in between each of the asparagus crowns. So that means I'm probably going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 in each row. So I am going to continue preparing this area and then bring the camera over and show you guys how I am planting the bare root strawberries. So as I said about our plants here, asparagus plants have a super deep root system, and strawberry plants have a very shallow root system. So that is one of the reasons why they make excellent companions to plant by one another. The strawberries also have a very spreading growth pattern. So it also makes sense to plant them next to asparagus because they can kind of provide like a natural living mulch to cover the soil and kind of choke out any weeds that may be wanting to form in your asparagus patch. And keeping your asparagus patch weed free is super important, and it can be kind of a pain. Now, strawberries grow from runners, so what they're going to do is sprout from this plant and then start spreading a little bit. Now, they do require a little bit of maintenance every year, cutting off some runners, and you can root them elsewhere, or you can just tidy up the plant a little bit. But otherwise, they are a pretty maintenance-free plant throughout the year, and they will just spread and help to cover and improve the soil where you plant them. So all I'm really doing to plant them, I've already kind of marked where the asparagus plants are. I know roughly how far apart they are by just digging up a little bit. So I can go to the center of where they will sprout from and pop in one of my bare root strawberry plants. Now I am burying it so the crown, or the part like just where the roots start to turn into where that little bit of growth is, I'm planting that so that there is just a tiny little peck of green popping up when I put it in the soil. And then since it is still a bit early in the season, I'm just gently recovering this whole area with a little bit of leaves. I'm not ready to remove all of these leaves completely, because what I'd really like to do when we bring in a load of compost is just lay it down all over all of these leaves, just to bury the leaves to help them further decompose, to help further loosen up and improve the soil. Okay, so it is now the next day, because being in a boot slows me down more than I thought it would, which I guess is the whole point of being in a boot. But we are going to pick up planting our rhubarb today. So it's supposed to rain a lot tomorrow, so this is a really good day for me to be getting things into the ground. So I'm gonna be doing this and a couple other things. So I'll show you guys what the bare root rhubarb looks like. So again, doesn't look like much, but it's got this little growth tip coming up. The other two do not have growth tips yet. Oh, one has a little one. So rhubarb, if you are unfamiliar with rhubarb, rhubarb is closely related to sorrel and buckwheat. Now I don't grow buckwheat, but I grow a lot of sorrel. I love, love, love sorrel. I chop it up, I put it in salads. French sorrel, I have it in the garden. It's perennial. I love anything that's perennial, like rhubarb, because it means it'll come back year after year. And since they're closely related, they both have that sour, tangy taste that I love so much, and that's from the high concentration of oxalic acid in the leaves. Now, with sorrel, you can eat the leaves and the stems. With rhubarb, you don't eat the leaves. Those are poisonous. You eat the stems. And since it does have a high concentration of oxalic acid, I know that there are some health conditions that mean you can't eat lots of those, or really any of those, so definitely look into that if you have any chronic health conditions. I think it's something related maybe to kidneys, but no health conditions here, and I love sour things, so sorrel and oxalic acid, anything with oxalic acid in it, I'm a big fan of. So unlike strawberries, which have a very shallow root system and make a good companion plant for something with a deep root system like asparagus, rhubarb needs a lot of space. So while these little starts may look tiny right now, you need to give them like 3 feet of space to grow, because they get very big and bushy. And because of that, I'm choosing to put at least 2 of the plants back here in my perennial garden that I have in the back of the yard. And this is supposed to be like my super low maintenance, mostly native plants, all perennials, everything super easy back here, and things that are resistant to groundhogs, because we have groundhogs that live under this shed. And as long as this house has been here, there have been groundhogs under the shed, according to our neighbor who has been here for longer than I've been alive. So we have decided to just try to coexist with the groundhogs instead of try and just trap them and relocate them every year. So I mostly put things back here that they are not interested in, or that I don't care if they mess with. Part of my goal for this area back here is just to have a big area that kind of lets the plants take over, and we do mulch back here, but eventually I'd like to get to the point where the plants are so mature and they've spread so much that it's kind of just like wild back here. So I put a lot of my clearance perennials back here that I get in the fall at the end of the season. I put random propagations back here, stuff that I dig up and separate that I can't bear to get rid of. So this is going to make a good addition back here. And I should mention too, I mentioned we have the groundhog issue back here. We call our groundhogs Tammy and Tommy. My daughter named them. We don't know if they're Even sometimes we don't know if it's more than one groundhog back here. We've seen two at the same time, but we really have no idea who's who. But we like to think there are two back here named Tammy and Tommy who are, my daughter says, married and living under our shed. So I like to try to coexist with them back here. And that means planting things that either I don't care if they touch or things that they're not interested in. So with rhubarb, they are not necessarily as interested in eating rhubarb because it's got like a funky taste to them. So we'll see how that goes back here. I've read that they can potentially cause issues with disturbing the plants through digging, but generally they stick around that side of this bed. They haven't gotten ballsy enough to really venture too far into the yard yet. So we'll see how things go with the rhubarb back here. And although these require about 3 feet of growing space, I am planting pretty tight back here just because I can always dig up and move some of the perennials or split them if I find that it's becoming too tight. But honestly, rhubarb can do full sun into part shade. So I'm hoping that since I'm planting it pretty tight here and underneath of some trees that aren't big yet, but will eventually get big and start shading this area, that they will do well back here. But that's the best part about gardening. If it doesn't work, you can just dig it up and move it or try again. All right, now that we've got all of our rhubarb planted and all of our strawberries planted, I'm going to be starting some of these seeds. So I'm going to be planting a watermelon Gurney's hybrid seedless delight watermelon. So this is the first time I've grown this specific seedless watermelon type, and I'm also going to be planting some Charleston gray watermelon seeds. Those have seeds in them that I got from a Master Gardener plant swap. So I will talk through why I'm planting both of these as I pot them up here. Even though I only want seedless watermelon, I don't want to grow watermelon with seeds in it because I don't have much patience. So seedless watermelon seeds can be grown from seed, and these are just special seeds, essentially, in a very broad nutshell, that were created to be sterile. So seedless watermelon plants are sterile, and they cannot pollinate themselves. They need to be planted next to a watermelon, a seeded watermelon variety, to help pollinate the seedless watermelon plant. So what I'm going to be doing is growing seedless watermelon on my little hill that we made outside of the greenhouse from all the dirt we dug up putting in the pond. And right next to that, in a pot, a large pot, I'm going to be growing a seeded watermelon plant only for the purposes of pollination. So I don't really want my seeded watermelon plant to completely take over the area because watermelons require a lot of space. I just want enough space so that the seedless watermelon can be pollinated. Now, don't feel bad if you have tried to grow watermelon before and you tried to grow seedless watermelon before and you did not realize that you had to grow a seeded watermelon plant. My first year growing watermelon, I grew a seedless watermelon that I picked up from just some random nursery here near my house, and there were no instructions on it, and I did not know that I had to grow it with a seeded watermelon plant. So I ended up with a bunch of teeny, teeny, tiny watermelons that never got pollinated and just rotted and died on the vine. Now, I did end up getting some random pollination, I think because I got lucky and something just ended up cross-pollinating my seedless watermelon plant. So I did end up getting like 2 watermelons off of my big seedless watermelon plant, but I had countless more just get like this big on the vine and then just rot and die off. And although they were super duper cute when they were tiny, I really wanted them to grow. So remember, if you are growing a seedless watermelon plant, make sure you grow a seeded variety nearby. And I read online that they recommend, whoever it was, recommends 1 seeded watermelon plant per 2 to 3 seedless watermelon plants. Now I'm only only planning to plant 2 seedless watermelon plants, so I am hoping that my 1 seeded watermelon plant in a large pot nearby will be enough. Okay, so I'm down in the basement now. I ended up leaving most of the seedless watermelons and all of the seeded watermelon plants in the greenhouse, but I'm gonna show you guys what I have down here. I only have 2 rows for starting seeds under lights, and this is really helpful for things that I'm getting started a little bit late. So I did just plant the vertically growing squash today, and then you see I brought a couple of the seedless watermelon seeds down here as well. These are sitting on a heat mat, and I've got some tomatoes and eggplants and bell peppers up here. Now, as soon as I pot these up, I will bring them outside to the greenhouse to continue growing, but anything that needs a little bit of extra light and heat this time of year, and then I got started a little bit late on, I've got down here for now. And we did also get something I'm really excited about. We got a hardy almond tree. It's called Hall's Hardy Almond Tree. My neighbor across the street told me about it, and that is actually why I ended up ordering everything from Gurney's, because she got the tree from Gurney's, so I decided to get another one from Gurney's as well. And that's come. We are going to be digging up a dogwood in our front yard to replace it with the almond tree, because we're kind of out of room in the back with all the fruit trees we planted already. So that is something super exciting to learn. If you are in zone 7, I think this one might even go down to zone 6 too. Check it out with Gurney's. It's called a Hall's Hardy Almond Tree, and they look really, really pretty when they're flowering as well until they start bearing almonds. So the last thing I'm gonna do here while my husband plants that tree, since I'm in a boot, is put these 2 cauliflower transplants in the ground, and then I am going to go relax my ankle, which I probably should have been doing this whole time, so don't tell my doctor. Until my next video, happy planting!